Hello, folks. I'm just doing a little bit of last-minute audio setup. Let me get everything loaded up on the Jamstream layout, and then we will make sure everything audio-wise is good here. All right. Get everything loaded up. I see Small E's in chat. What's up, Small E? Welcome to the Jam Stream. That is not what I wanted to click. There we go. Small E redeemed the hydrate. All right, we'll start off and stay hydrated. It's important. It is warm today too. All right, I got a couple things I need to sort of talk about to intro the jam session today. So let's see. I'm gonna put a real quick, simple background beat, so I'm not sitting here talking in absolute silence. While I'm doing this, can you let me know if the speaking volume and everything is good? Because I had to redo my sound settings with this OBS update, and hopefully everything is coming in loud and clear. I can boost things as necessary, so let me know if you can't hear me. Let's do something real simple. Just all right. We'll leave that there in the background. Looking at the readout, we are just under yellow. It seems a little bit lower than usual. The problem with the new update to OBS, and when I changed some settings in my sound readouts, they don't display the same way. So I'm used to it showing me hitting near yellow on the audio, and now it shows me a little bit lower. So I'm going to try and project here, but let me know if I need to up the input. Smalley says, voice sounds good for me at least, but it seems a little quiet. Okay. How about now? This is just regular speaking voice. I upped it by about 20%. I just need to be a little bit careful because speaking volume is, as long as it's audible and I'm not competing with the music in the background, that's fine. But when I start actually making beatbox noises, I need to be careful because they'll hit the mic a little bit harder. And I don't want it to go red line every time I make a beatbox type noise. So like, I can actually test that here. It's regular case snares. That one sounds okay. As long as I don't point directly at the mic, that one should be all right too. I want the sound balance to be good because we're going to be doing a lot of BGM work today, and I want to make sure everything is audible for you folks that are tuning in. So to sort of preface today, we're going to talk a little bit about some beatboxing technique. I'm not going to do a freestyle record today. We'll leave the results of the last one standing. But we'll talk a little bit about beatbox technique and sound theory like we usually do. And then I want to devote the majority of this stream today to brainstorming ideas for the upcoming Halloween BGM pack release. And as I mentioned on Twitter earlier, right before we went live, today's setup is going to be a little bit different. We're still working with the loop station. You can hear the beat going in the background here. But I have a slightly new addition to this setup. I was able to finally configure my desk so that it actually works. But we have Synthesizer-kun is here. I have a very large Yamaha synthesizer that is very unwieldy, but I have it set up. So now, in addition to just the loop tools, and my noises, we now have the full suite of additional instruments with my synthesizer. And so I think that'll make things a lot more interesting for the BGM brainstorming, because now we'll have access to a bunch of other instruments and tools, and we can actually use these in conjunction with the loop stations tools as well. So if I wanted to do something like, let's say, ring modulator, which gives this kind of mechanical or alien distortion over any input that comes into the mic. So if I turn it on and speak into it, it sounds like this, with that kind of distortion. But if I run the piano through it, I don't even know what this sounds like. It would sound like this. Gives it kind of a metallic kind of chime noise. So basically we're working with two instruments instead of one, and they synergize pretty well. So I think that'll give us a lot of interesting options for creating some spooky BGM. Put my reverb back on, drop that down a little bit. And then at the end of the stream, what I'll probably do is I'm going to preview some of the tracks that I have finished for the Halloween pack that's coming up. It's going to be bigger than any of the releases so far, I think. Based on what I've done so far, it's definitely going to be probably the most tracks I've released, but they're also really interesting. I'm pretty excited about it this year because it's going to be different. Since I'm using, again, synthesizer on and off stream for the compositions, they're going to sound and feel a lot different because it's not just beatboxing noises and the loop tools. Now it's both. It's synthesizer stuff plus beatboxing plus the loop tools and everything. So that'll be coming out in October. And I think what I'll probably end up doing on Twitter, just for kind of a fun thing, is I'm going to maybe next week start real slowly drip feeding the track list, maybe like one every few days or so, until the middle or later part of October. And then people can see the track list and get kind of an idea of what's coming. I think that could be fun. And so as far as updates goes, I think that will do it. So let's see, we can kill this. I will run through some warm-up beats just as freestyle practice without the timer. And I'll use this to kind of test my audio settings here again and make sure we're good. I think mic settings are good right here. When I start actually making noise, I'll be watching it to see if it peaks. All right, and then we will go into a brief discussion of sound theory and then see where that leads us and head into BGM brainstorming. So let's go ahead and get started. Hey, Sour Lad. I see you in chat. Welcome to the jam stream. We are just working through a bit of warm-up, a little bit of freestyle warm-up, and also testing audio levels. So like I told Small E earlier, let me know if I need to up any of the levels on my mic. I want to make sure you folks can hear me. Oh, I should probably test BGMs. That's definitely going to be a snare I use later. So what's that one look like? Okay, I gotta be careful with that one. If I point directly at the mic, it's definitely gonna peak. Okay, I'm gonna leave the settings there. When we start working on the BGM stuff in a little bit, I will continue to keep an eye on it and make sure we are not going completely off the rails with the sound settings. Okay, so let's change the caption. Give me one sec. I'll update that here. And let's talk a little bit about sound theory. Make sure I don't knock my water bottle over onto my setup here. This particular setup with all my hardware is not ideal and not very feng shui. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just look at what I posted on Twitter earlier before we went live on the stream. You could see how I managed to get Synthesizer-kun set up with everything. It is functional, but not pretty and elegant, and that's okay. But I think it'll be fun when we get into BGM to actually have another instrument to play with. So thinking about the topics for beatbox technique and sound theory, I didn't prepare any comprehensive lesson type topics to talk through today. So I figured we would do kind of a mini sound check update on the stuff that I've been actively working on. And I did want to sort of demo a new technique that I've known how to do. I'm not good at it and I've been actively practicing it to get better. So I want to put it on the list of developing sounds for us to check back in on the future because, again, it's new, but it is kind of a neat technique that's different from everything else we've done so far. So we'll get to that in a sec. But looking at basses, we've talked a bit about practicing and developing techniques for different types of bass sounds, the sung basses, the lip-based oscillation basses. We've talked about lip roll type bass sounds. And so there's a way to kind of check in. Again, the one I've been drilling a lot lately is vibration bass. I think if I keep pushing it, it's going to continue to get better. And I think the sound is going to continue to evolve a little bit, although I don't know how obvious it's going to be on these jam streams because we only do these every other week or so. But I'd be curious to see going way back to the earlier ones we did maybe several months ago and see what the sound sounded like back then and kind of compare it to now. Because like we've talked about in beatboxing, anything that's considered developing sound, the more you practice it over time, the better you get at it, and then the more the sound evolves. So when you start off doing a certain type of sung bass type, for example, in the beginning it's going to sound a little more rough and less refined. Depending on the type, it might even sound kind of messy or muddy. And as you get better, the sound gets a lot more clean because you can do it easier. Your anatomy adapts to muscle memory, and your ability to do the sound, especially on the fly in the middle of a pattern or a routine, is also something that improves. And so if we look at the vibration bass, and I'm not 100% warmed up throat-wise, so we'll see how well it works. But the vibration bass, if we do a real quick recap of the technique, since I usually do that whenever I talk about these in case new people are listening and don't know what I'm talking about for background. A sung bass, like throat bass and vibration bass, which are cousins, or what I'm talking about here. So the throat bass sounds like it's using the vocal cords, and it's a tightening of the vocal cords and forcing air through them to get kind of a distortion. I'm not going to break the technique down in depth here since we've talked about it on previous streams, but getting that sort of warbling, distorted bass is a really important cornerstone of the throat bass technique, and it's usually one of the first ones people learn. And by varying your pitch, you can change the notes of the bass, and by changing your mouth position, we talked about variations and texturing, you can change how the bass sounds as well, which is how you go from like a to like a, and that's just putting my tongue in the way of the sound and airflow. And one of my favorite filters for throat bass is just keeping the lips barely open. So instead of a wah 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 wah, we're getting a it's that slight vibration on it, which gives it a little bit more of a distorted sound. So if we were to take the technique for throat bass and then push it further down in the throat and the vocal cords, and then open them up so they're not quite as tight and let them reverberate, you get vibration bass. And so the sound changes a bit because you're hitting a lower register and getting that sort of resonation with the vocal cords. And that would sound like, for going from throat bass, and then dropping it down, you can sort of hear when the buzzing turns into more of a rattle, and that's when it hits the vibration bass. So it would go, and so one of the drills that we talked about in one of the earlier bass discussions is learning how to go between the two, back and forth, high to low is a really good exercise for muscle memory and getting used to transitioning from the tighter to the lower, and going back and forth. Something as simple as going like, I could do mouth closed, so I'm not having to open and close my mouth. Just some like, and so going back to the idea of practicing and refining vibration bass, that lower register set of sounds when you're dropping that technique into the lower part of the vocal cords kind of keeps the sound within that lower octave, I guess it would be. And one thing that's kind of interesting is because you're forcing all the air from your vocal cords up out of your throat through your mouth, you can adapt where the sound is going. This is going to be kind of complicated to explain, but you can treat it kind of like a hum if you direct the sound more out of your nose through your nasal passage. And so for vibration bass, if you're just having the sound come straight out of your mouth, it would sound like, it sounds similar to throat bass, it's just lower, and you're getting a bit more of a rattle depending on how hard you're pushing it. But if you close your mouth like I was doing earlier, and then you sort of direct the sound out of your nose like you'd be humming, then it changes the airflow and it makes it so you can do things with your mouth at the same time, and that's what I've been practicing. So if we try and contrast the open mouth and then closed mouth, trying to direct the sound kind of upwards in the nasal cavity, would sound like, and And a good way to do that would be to raise the tongue up and sort of kind of block off the air so that it's not just going straight out of your mouth. And it distorts the sound a little bit, which is kind of an interesting way to play around with the vibration-based technique. And so to illustrate this in the best way I can think, just on the fly here, if we did a simple beat using vibration bass and, let's say, a BGM snare or spit snare. Open mouth, it might sound like if we do it closed mouth on everything except for the snare, because I do have to slightly open my mouth to make the snare sound come out, it changes the sort of texturing on the vibration bass a bit, just because we're directing the sound to a different direction, if you will. So if you did that, it'd sound like and I think the best way you could think of how you're making the sound come out when you're forcing it through the nasal passage and out with the mouth closed, you're kind of going So instead of which is like a whoa whoa noise with the mouth open, instead you're with the vibration bass, you're going kind of like because that's how you hum, right? If you go you can feel the nose and vibrations, the vibrations coming out of your nose if you're just doing the So you use that with the vibration bass, and that's how you're getting the and the resonation just hits differently than the open mouth, whoa, 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 whoa. And by using your tongue, you can even oscillate it a little bit, so it's going That's what it'd sound like if I wasn't doing any sort of distortion, just And so we're going back to our last jam stream discussion a few weeks ago about variations. Something as simple as directing which path the sound is coming out of, and then using your tongue changes the way the sound completely hits, and basically have two different basses using the same technique. It's pretty powerful, and because vibration bass is a bit more strenuous on the throat, doing that and practicing is also helping your whole endurance, muscle memory, your ability to do the sound for longer. And I think that's pretty important. And so that for that particular bass type, it's what I've been playing around with quite a bit lately, is just slight tweaks, variations, and also just trying to get the sound to be even stronger. Pushing different octaving and notes, going out of the comfort zone for high and low, and just seeing how far to push it. And I see Sarah has redeemed a hydrate. I'm going to be going through a lot of water today. The air quality where I live is not too great right now. I think there's a lot of fires in the area, so it's smoky. And I think that is drying my throat out, making it a little bit scratchier than usual. So I will do my best to keep hydrated, but if I sound a little bit weird today, that's why. All right, so we can move on from vibration bass. Let's finish off sound theory with an introduction of a new bass technique. This is one I talked about before, and I didn't really demo it because it's not one I'm good at, but I've been practicing it, and I want to get better, and we'll add it to the list of developing sounds to check in on. It's actually pretty easy to do, and it's easy to practice. It's just not one that I've historically put in the tool set, but I think it'd be a good one. And this one is called vocal bass. I think this one might also be called Starsky bass, because he might have been the one who invented the technique, but most people in beatboxing know it as vocal bass, and it was really popularized by a pro beatboxer from, I believe, Uruguay named Pt1. Super talented dude. I may or may not have shown his videos when he did the Beatbox media share a long time ago. But unlike the heavy throat basses, which are distortion and really low end, like a drop focus type of bass in a lot of ways, things like your throat vibration, chest, vocalized chest, vocal bass is more melodic, as the name would suggest. And so I'll explain the technique and then do my best to sort of show how it sounds. Mine's not clean, so it's going to sound really kind of gross and muddy, but it's a really interesting technique because it uses parts of the mouth anatomy that is different from everything else in beatboxing. And so you start by creating a uvular growl or like a gargle. If you've ever, gargled mouthwash or something when you're sick and you kind of go like, I'm going to get away from the mic, it sounds gross, and make that kind of noise with your throat. You're using your uvula, that punching bag thing in the back of your throat. You're using that to create that gargling noise. So vocal bass takes that technique and sort of uses that a little bit. It doesn't make it quite so gross, so I'll do my best not to turn this into horror ASMR. But if you take your tongue and you raise it up and you create that sort of gargle noise with your uvula, and you're using your tongue more than your throat because you can't raise your throat up, obviously. But the sound you want to go for sounds like, again, I'm going to try not to make this sound too gross. It does have a bass resonation. I can hear it in my headphones. But you're basically taking that uvula and vibrating it against your tongue and just doing like a... And my understanding is the more you do it, and it tickles, it feels really weird. In fact, it makes me gag if I do it for too long, so I have to be careful. But your mouth instantly starts filling up with saliva because it's a really weird and unusual sensation. But my understanding is the more you practice it and get better with it, the less that happens, and then you just get used to it. Your mouth and your mouth anatomy and your uvula will be just sort of conditioned to not, feel like something weird is happening in your throat. But you're taking that noise, and then you're just combining it with a simple sung note. You're not humming it out your nose. You're just doing a simple hum note from your throat out of your mouth, just like a wah, 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 with that uvular gargle at the same time. And so you're creating a distorted sung note, and that's vocal bass. So if you do both of those together, it sounds like and the kind of rattling wetness is something that goes away as you get better with it. That's why mine sounds like that. But if you solely perfect that combination, and again, you don't have to practice the singing part, it's really just the uvular gargle noise that you have to get clean and make it so it's less distorted. The whole noise and vocal bass is something you can use in melodies, which is really cool. So you might do something like and again, you want it to be more melodic with a little bit of distortion underneath it as a texture and not like, gurgly. And so I'm putting this on the list of developing bass sounds because at some point, once I get better at doing it, it's going to turn into a lot more clean melodic sound, and I want to check in every once in a while on these jam streams, and we'll see how the sound evolves. But it's a really neat technique, and if you want to create more melodic sound sets and things like that in beatboxing patterns and routines, that's what vocal bass is really good for. And it's a pretty cool technique, and it's not hard. It's just hard to get good at. The technique, once you figure out how to do the gargle, is really easy. It's just a matter of getting it clean, like a lot of the other techniques and stuff we've talked about on these jam streams. So we will keep that on the list for developing sounds and check in with that one in the future. And hopefully we'll see some progression. So take note, it sounds like I'm choking to death as of right now. Next time, maybe it will sound a lot more like a distorted melody sound. All right. I think that's about it for sound theory. Again, I didn't prepare a whole lot today because I want to focus the majority of our time on stream today with the idea of BGM brainstorming. So let's switch gears. Let me change my caption one more time, and we will move on. All right. The BGM brainstorming. Like we've talked about on previous sessions here, the whole idea of coming up with ideas collectively to create BGM tracks for upcoming releases is what we do here on these streams for this particular segment. And in the past, where we focused purely on just the loop station and learning its tools, which I'm still in the process of doing, I will probably be trying to learn this thing for indefinitely as opposed to mastering it real quickly because it's a really complex instrument. Today we've got something different. So let me kind of demonstrate what we're working with in addition to the loop. So right here off to my left is Synthesizer-kun. And this is a Yamaha brand synthesizer. Hopefully this is coming in at an audible level for you folks on stream. I'm seeing it ping on the audio readout, so I think we're okay. This thing, was it 70-something keys? I forget how many keys this is. This was a secondhand donation to me from another source. Someone was upgrading their keyboard, so they gave me this old one. And it's a pretty good tool. It's just freaking huge, which is why I haven't hooked it up till now, because it's difficult to set up with my streaming setup here, but we got it. So this thing has a whole bunch of instrument presets that I've been messing around with. So we can go from a piano to a string instrument. This is folk guitar. This kind of sounds like a harpsichord, actually. We do have one of those. Sarah said, audio sounds good. Okay, I'm going to try not to move around too much, but I have to constantly be looking to my left to see what I'm doing on the keyboard or synthesizer. So if you see my model just suddenly go, it's because I'm looking away from the camera. And so the way I have this thing hooked up, which is pretty neat, is I have it hooked up with an auxiliary cable from the synthesizer directly to the loop, which means anything it picks up, like we talked about earlier, can be plugged directly into the loop and captured as a sound sample. So if I just do something like, and now that's looping on track 1. And the thing that's kind of neat is I can also apply the loop's effects to any instrument incoming just like I would be from the mic. And I demonstrated that earlier where I added like a little bit of distortion with the ring modulator over the synthesizer. I'm going to leave the actual playback here just so it's not too loud. But in addition to that, anything track level or input level we do on the loop station, like a filter, we can also apply to the effects. So we've essentially just given us a whole new set of tools for messing around with in the loop station coming out of the synthesizer. So I think that'll give us a lot of interesting options when it comes to coming up with BGM ideas. And originally I was thinking about sitting down, but because I have to reach, I'll just stand up for now until my feet explode. This is the distorted guitar, like an electric guitar. full disclaimer for folks who might be listening, I don't play the piano. I know a little bit about just piano theory, but like I'm not formally trained. So a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be doing with this thing are just by ear and experimenting around. So if there's any legit piano players that are going to be listening to this or watching this later, if I do something really offensive, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to make use of the tools I've got. So let's see. We'll start with a new track. And let's think about sort of a vibe and like an atmosphere that we're looking for when it comes to, again, we want kind of atmospheric, Halloween, spoopy-esque. It doesn't need to be, you know, like a horror theme, but the whole point is to be thematically on point for Halloween season, because that's what these releases are going to go towards. The tracks are going to be part of the pack I released for October. So what I've been doing is setting up a bass beat to set the BPM, set the sort of tempo and feel of the song using beatboxing stuff, and then sort of supplementing that with other ideas using the instrument sets we have access to here. So if we think about, let's try a slower one to start, something that's going to be a bit more, maybe more ominous, and we'll see what we can kind of come up with. So I was thinking maybe something like, I think about snares and kicks. Let's set just bass drum kicks first, because I also have to think about all the songs I've done so far. I have probably completed about 10, I want to say. So I don't want to overlap with the stuff I've already done. And again, at the end of the stream, we'll preview some of the completed tracks for the upcoming Halloween packs. You guys will get a kind of a preview of what's to come. So what if we went for something kind of like, we do quarter notes, and like a stagger kick at the end. So let's see, 2 measure. Simple light kick, and then we can go guitar to bass and add like a throat kick underneath it to give it more of a punch. It might sound kind of more like a heartbeat depending on how much I up it. So I'm going to turn that on, and then I will up my mic settings so you guys won't be able to understand me for a sec. But it should sound better. All right, let's turn that back down. I'm realizing that the kick is coming in a little bit louder in some spots, but that's okay. What we're getting is kind of like a footstep type of effect, which I think we can work with that a little bit. So if we've got, I'll save this. Make sure I don't delete my own work again. Now we can think of a hat pattern, and let's do this. I have a whole bunch of percussion instruments that are built into the loop here, or the synthesizer. So let's see if we can get a different type of hat. Because normally I do like a t-t-t-t or a tss-tss. Let's see if we can get something that sounds different, and then slot that into the beat that we're doing. So it's going to be a hybrid of beatboxing and synthesizer sounds, which will be a little bit different. I think this is one of the drum kits here. Yep. Phil Collins. Where are the hats? Not, I don't have anything memorized where the instruments lie on these particular kits. So I need to go and figure out where the hi-hat is. Here's one. Okay. This is a regular closed hi-hat type noise. So I think we can make use of this. Now we gotta think of where we want the hats to go in the beat as we're constructing it here. We want it off beat or on beat? I'm gonna mess around a little bit with a couple different options before I actually try and record stuff. And we could have quarter notes that drop out with a double kick. That might be interesting. I'm going to drop the volume of the synthesizer down a little bit. Because my dynamics and EQ boosts to the sounds on the mic also affect what's coming into the synthesizer, it's going to be louder than it would be if you were just using it normally. So let's see. It's also volume dependent on how hard I hit the keys as well. Let's try that. We have a hat run that kind of comes in, drops for a sec, leaves, and then comes back. Okay, that'll be functional. Now, snares. Let's think about what we would potentially be doing for snare noises and where we would put them. I'm thinking like a kind of muffled PF snare, which we should be able to do with a filter, actually. Let's see, this is low pass. What would it sound like if we go 50% and then do like a PF snare while this is on? Okay, low pass turned up to 50%. It sounds completely muffled. It sounds like you're hitting like something on the mic with a towel over it. So we definitely want it muffled that much. Or if we drop it down to 25. Oh, interesting. It actually muffles it more when the filters drop down a lot lower. Another way to do an interesting snare that I've kind of found by accident, really, involves using the guitar to bass again, but you do a sharp snare into it like a K snare, and then it comes out kind of more like a muffled clap type noise, which I've used on a couple, but we can see what we can do with the sound here. So let me turn that on and just see. All right, let me turn this off for a sec. So you could hear that kind of muffled K snare. Problem is first I did it too soft and you could barely hear it. Then I did it too loud and it kind of overpowers the entire track. So I'm going to try and kind of hit a middle ground and see if I can get it to be a little bit more even. I think it was like a hair offbeat too. So let me try and re-record that. Okay. That's a lot better. Let's go ahead and save our progress so far. Okay, so we have a rough skeleton for a beat. Now we need to think of a first instrument to add. I usually go rhythm and bass. And so we've got a couple different options for that. We could go for a regular sung guitar to bass type bass line like we usually do. We could think of a synthesized note or an instrument type to use for a bass. And we actually have a whole series of basses here, and I can demo what that sounds like. So this is an acoustic bass. Here, let me drop the beat down a little so you can hear the instruments. This is a finger plucked bass. I'm going to go on the lower end here to demonstrate. Pick bass. It's pretty similar, but using a pick, so it's going to have a sharper hit on the beginning. That's going to be a bit of a challenge since the way I have this synthesizer set up, the high end is right next to me. The low end is a little bit further, so I have to kind of reach. And I can't see what I'm doing without turning around. I kind of like the idea of using this particular bass type. We can actually make it heavier by adding guitar to bass, and it'll take that low end boost that normally just supplements a sung note, and it'll combine it with the actual synthesizer note too. If we did that, it would sound something like this. Because it's basically taking the low end boost on top of a low end note, it's giving it kind of like this big reverberation to it. And I don't think that necessarily sounds better. I'd rather do it separately with a sung note. Let's see what we can do with some notes right around here with this particular instrument. That might work. I think the rhythm might be slightly off by a beat though. Yeah. When it comes back down, it's off. We could also do a faster rhythm for the bass line too, if we wanted to have a bit more movement. Let's see, start here. Yeah, I think I want sustained notes. This is not supposed to be like a bouncy kind of faster tempo song. So I'd rather do. See if we can get it to line up. Let's do this. Too fast again. Just a quick question for those listening on stream. Am I giving off any feedback with my mic settings? Again, I had to switch things around for this because I haven't set things up this way before. But when I talk or when I'm doing any sort of input, is it giving any sort of feedback on the stream end? Because I could sort of hear a little bit, but I don't know where that's coming from. It could be my mic settings. Just want to make sure it's not creating static. Well, let me try and record that bass line again. Still a hair off on the second part. Yeah, it's a little closer. We'll leave the bass line like that for now. I might redo it and extend out the last part because I think it cuts off a half measure too early. But I think it's on rhythm. So even if I have that shorter section looping the way it is now, then I think it'll still be fine. Go ahead and save what we've done so far. Now we can think of a third instrument loop track to add. I'm thinking we experiment around with the string instruments that are part of the sound set here. So if I go, let's see, what number is it? Go here, we have a whole bunch of different string instruments. This is just regular default strings. Do a 2-note progression. Let's see, we want to go one step. Well, not half step. Trying to think of which type of chord I want. There's this one, or this one. They're similar. Might be a good chance to demo something else I was looking at a little bit. ago. Just realized I had one of my sources muted, but that only would have been a big deal if something happens. But now I have my notifications on. If we take one of our input effects that normally affects anything coming in through a mic or additional sound source, let's say we turn on Slicer, which adds like the repeated delay. It chops things up. If we add that and then we input it on the strings, this is what it sounds like. It's kind of neat. That's an eighth note sort of distortion cut. So I'm not hitting anything other than turning that on and off, and it's turning the single note into eighth notes. So that's how we're getting that.